a smoking version of Graduation in Zion. And we heard Bob Marley with Ride, Natty Ride. Hey, welcome to the program. It's DJ Pockets here with another experience you won't soon forget. I keep pulling them out of my hat. And tonight is no different. I have a galactic historian named Andrew Bartzis, who I'm going to Skype with, if that's permissible. Nothing X-rated here. Anyway, so we'll get that going in a little bit. Till then, let's listen to a little Jimi Hendrix. This is West Coast Seattle Boy, the Jimi Hendrix Anthology. And this one is Are You Experienced? This is the previously unreleased recording of Are You Experienced? So let's take a gander at this. Hello.
Hey, how you doing there? Just 1 second.
Oh, all right. You're loud and clear.
There we go.
Skype
Didn't know you wanted video.
Why not?
How are we doing here?
Why not?
How's my mic?
Sound good. Say something.
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing
I sound good?
Yeah, you sound great.
All right.
All right.
So we are on FM radio here, community station. I like the way you guys have set up.
Great. Yeah. This is 107.7 WVEW here in Brattleboro, Vermont. Beautiful Brattleboro. Where do you hail from?
I hail from Cleveland, Ohio, but now I'm living in Yelm, Washington, actually. I moved here about 3 months ago.
Okay. Yelm, where is that?
South and west of Seattle, right on the Puget Sound.
Okay.
If you're familiar at all with that area. Very, very similar to the main Vermont area, if you're familiar with the coast or the insides. Mount Rainier is about 40 miles from where I'm at.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I did some time in eastern Washington. And,
okay.
Pretty familiar with Western Washington as well. Pretty wet out there, or how's the weather out there?
Not really. The weather has changed so much that myth of it raining all the time in Seattle ended in the 90s, and it was a myth then.
Yeah. Yep. Well.
And they don't even get a lot of snow. And I'm from Ohio, so I'm used to snow.
Yeah.
40 inches of snow overnight. I'm very much used to that. Well, they don't get snow here.
It's great to have you on the program, Andrew. Bartzis, is that how I pronounce your last?
That is correct.
And I was looking at your bio, and it's quite impressive. And how does that lead to a galactic historian? I guess we can get into that. But you're a healer and a psychic reader for nearly 20 years.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Reiki master.
That bio hasn't been updated in a little bit.
Okay.
I've done a lot of material since that bio went up.
All right.
Let's see. I've been doing this for about 20 years. Started when I was 9 years old. I had an experience. I was at a baseball game. It was bottom of the ninth inning, and the team was a tied score. 1 second, my tea is boiling.
Nope.
All right, sorry. Wasn't exactly ready there.
Yep.
Anyways, at the bottom of the ninth inning, tied score, our team hit a home run, and all of a sudden everyone cheered, and something came over me, and the information, everyone's past, present, and future lives came inside of my knowingness and my understanding, and it began this long process of understanding that each and every living being is a conscious sentient being inside a DNA skin suit that is technology.
Wow.
And this awareness was my awakening at that young age to what the galactic historian is a person that can identify species through soul family, through origin, through light body DNA, through physical DNA, and track the lines back throughout time, through galaxies and other universes, to show that there are DNA lineages that have been supported for many millions or billions or trillions of years through many different universes, and that when they came through a master experience like Earth, which was part of a system called the Galactic Ascension Machine, where the best of the best came to find the greatest resolve of karma, and they became part of what's called timeline genocides. This is what I learned. This is how I began to experience my life at 9 years old.
Wow.
And as I grew older and older, multiple sets of experience happened to me, both for the positive and for the negative, that kept showing and showing and showing me there was so much more truth than to the lies that we were being told. I remember being taught in my own school that Vietnam was a police action. And I remember arguing with the teacher that call it war. And that teacher says, that's what the books say. Okay?
Yeah. Yep.
That's what the books say. And again, what are the books going to say? Books going to say about 2000, 2008, 2014. You know, a galactic historian is a witness in the neutral perspective, translating the infinite language to the finite language, so we human beings, who are all in our own path to free will, can begin to translate in our own language greater concepts, greater thoughts, greater ways to be free, instead of being limited to this concept that light and dark must always battle.
Right. So this has been going on since you were 9 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. And
Well, it started before that, but that it
mhm.
culminated into that experience. I many experiences when I was young and challenged my parents. You know, in a Greek family, I grew up in a restaurant business, so
Mhm.
many experiences of people seeing me doing very paranormal things.
So how did you deal with that as a youngster, being 9, and as a teenager? How did you deal with all this wealth of, I don't know,
Oh, you couldn't
information
tell
and
anyone. I just literally could not tell anyone. Who would you tell?
right, right, right.
I remember being at that young age, going, "Who am I going to tell?
Yeah.
Who am I going to tell?" I mean, you know, working in the restaurant, you hear people's stories. You know, everybody talks.
Yeah.
And I was groomed to do that in the restaurant business. You just talk and talk and talk to people, and you find their story, and then you realize that they're all in a system of belief. And I knew that. I knew what they were believing in was what they were consciously manifesting. And in that manifestation of life force, it had rules behind it, and those rules were a reality that we were living in. And I realized early, like what was going on. Like this is not real. The one of these is a dream. And began this process from a 9 to about 20, 21, whereas I was searching for more and more of what this meant to this me, this individual lifetime, because I'd come to learn by the time I was 11 that I'd planned 10,000 lifetimes to be here. I'd left a cookie crumble of information, and that time at the baseball stadium was planned. Every one of those people were contracted to be there in that city at that time.
Hmm.
And it's not hard to put yourself in a matrix of contracted people being in a city in the future if you understand the frequency of the land.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. I was at a baseball stadium at the edge of Lake Erie, and there's people that are within miles and miles, and you have the water there, the stadium. It was its perfect energetic flare. I know there were other people that experienced other things at that moment. You know, everyone in that stadium experienced something. I
Yeah.
know that. My experience was one of the many thousands, and I made it through because it was very, very difficult to be aware of so many different layers of information and then talk about it publicly versus privately. My choice to come out public was to remind people that we are sovereign free will beings, and sometimes we must stand up to people's belief systems in friendship, in gratitude, in respect, because without that, there is no place to break bread. There is no way to make room for something new. And in a society that's giving us the old recycled ideas over and over again, they've recycled it to the point that they've recycled it and given us GMO. They've given us contracts on our when we're born, your birth certificates, your bonds. For people that are in the law and sovereignty on the law side, your citizenship. It's also part of your soul. They are all interlinked. And to think that our reality is not interlinked is to deny the most basic law of quantum physics, consciousness entanglement.
Yeah. Consciousness entanglement. What is that?
Well, when an observer does a quantum experiment and wants to observe two particles interacting, it is now known that the observer influences the reaction of the quantum
Oh
particles.
yeah, okay, right. That was some physics conference where they came about that idea. I think in the
Yeah, well,
20s. I think
Max Planck in the 1960s and 70s.
60s and 70s. Okay.
Consciousness and energy depict the nature of reality,
Right.
in which he did the actual experiments and proved that the observer, even if somebody was observing 1 year later, still influenced the results.
Wow.
So he came up with this concept: consciousness and energy depict the nature of reality. Well, literally, our consciousness manifests and decides what we observe, what we see, what we manifest. If a person walks into a casino and walks right up, picks up the dice, rolls perfect sixes, takes his money, and walks out, that person has enough confirmation in themselves to consciously manifest that. And in gambling scenarios, we see this all the time. But we also see the other side where many failures happen because it requires so much conscious energy to be able to do that in a reality that has a high layer of resistance.
Yeah.
This is where we come to the understanding of time. What is it?
A man-made
You're on the
construct.
exactly. You're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast.
Yes.
So what? There's 3 hours difference.
Right.
Well, if we just went by the lunar alignment, we would both know what time it is locally. We don't need these complicated systems of time. And they're
Yeah.
created that way to get people lost.
Right. Let's back up a little bit on this
Okay.
idea of galactic history, because I guess to me, I thought, well, maybe it is true that we were going to talk about the history of, say, mankind here on Earth or in this solar system. Do you have any information about that kind of?
Oh yeah, I have the entire Akashic record of this world and 20,000 other worlds. What area of history would you like to go into? As soon as you start asking questions, it's understanding the context in which you're asking a question. Oftentimes we come into there's not just one timeline running, there's four multiple timelines running because beings 2 million years ago were at a different frequency rate and a different density than we are now.
Mm.
And that's the multidimensional nature of ourselves. We've gone from this filter like football brackets, from multiples to singles. This is where we're at the singular. We're out of the Iron Age. And when the Golden Age decides to come in, it's through conscious manifestation to bring us over the hump of conscious limitations, which are our generational expectations.
Right. Well,
So what part of history would you like to know
oh
about?
gosh, I don't know. I really like history, so we could be here all night. How about the golden age? Was there a golden age on Earth?
There's
And
been many golden ages.
okay,
There's cycles and waves. It can go from 26,000 years to 2 million years, these ages. Some are really long cycles. One of the cycles that we're finishing now is the atypical Mayan long count. But what the Mayan long count is trying to say is when time for the Mayan began recording at a specific date and time, there was a belief system that was created that had an end date, and that was something that was inserted into the societal structure. So that is what's called the timepiece for the galactic ascension machine. And that's the timepiece many millions of souls had to resolve all of the negative karma that they created 54 million years ago when there was something called timeline genocide. This is when the Lemurians, the Atlanteans, the Lyrians, the Pleiadians, everybody in their own way was fighting over the DNA trade of what was going on here on Earth. Earth had discovered a DNA skin suit technology that made it far more experiential than everyone else. With your body, you didn't need a spaceship. You could
okay,
become energy with just your DNA. And you could take DNA memories from one world to another, where the vast majority of beings had nothing like that. So there began this attempt to take over here on Earth. And this is when the greatest deceptions of our free world universe happened. At about 58 million years ago, about 61 fiat years ago. When I say fiat, what that means is they're unfunded timeline genocide timelines that have actual factual events that are used from them that are spread to thousands of others, false timelines. And this was what was done to create timeline genocide, to break apart the human soul so other souls can force incarnate into our astral worlds. Instead of coming here with troops on the ground, they came here with souls in our astral world and began incarnating in mass in our skin suits. We went from about 2 trillion people on our world to 500 trillion people in about a little bit more than a year.
wow, that's
Right.
impressive.
So that's how fast we expanded. And with that expansion came corruption. And that corruption created factions. Those factions created division within unity consciousness because of the mass squatting of our planetary consciousness. Now, our planet is extremely special. It has portals and capabilities of connecting to every other planet in the universe through a dreaming aspect, even ones that are not created yet. And our planet was created on purpose, like this way, from ground up, with a soul inside it to be a galactic seed planet. Its purpose was to seed DNA skin suit concepts on blank Akashic record worlds. In Earth, when it was understood what it was, when those people came here and began mass investing, wanted to steal this planet. And it began a long process of planetary theft wars that reigned from about 54 million years ago to about 31 million years ago, where planets were being stolen from one galaxy to another, and they were trying to put together
Wow.
literally the best solar system with the best quality planets to get the best amount of souls there to challenge what was going on Earth. The fact that they had expanded so fast. Yes, corruption was there, but they literally had become the lighthouses of the universe. Everyone was going there for knowledge, wisdom, and education, and all these other people, they felt spiffed. And so this began this sense of competition, and this competition created these concepts of war. And Lemuria was razed and destroyed 3 separate times. The Lemurians, they look similar to us, but they're higher frequency, higher density beings. They look human, but you can see through them at times. Not always. They can be consciously manifested here. They can manifest or unmanifest their bodies at will into energy and have complete interaction with their surroundings. And that is our legacy to inherit, that DNA wisdom.
What about the Atlanteans?
The Atlanteans are a creation from timeline genocide where anchors in reality happen, where something that was very vital to create that endpoint that I talked about, to be created, there needed to be a society that would be the precursor to the Mayans, and that precursor society would influence the Olmecs, the Toltecs, and so on to create a generational patterning and an imprinting into the social consciousness that would spread into the DNA. This is how they began programming our species, and that was an attempt to counter other programming that was going on by other off-world species who were trying to make us a more subservient society, which eventually devolved into a slave society, which eventually devolved into a war society, that evolved into rebellious society that turned around and attacked all of the people that were trying to enslave it, which ultimately killed trillions, which is another legacy that we learned to inherit. That's the Atlantean reflection, where they turned Earth into a fortress, where they turned it into a massive weapon. The first time in universal history something of this grand scale was done, in which whole sections of galaxies or planets were wiped out of existence, as if they never existed. They went back to the initial timeline of those people that immigrated to this universe to create that planet and canceled their actual existence in this universe with free will.
You're blowing my mind, Andrew.
I do this frequently.
Yeah.
I am blowing people's minds. Again, you ask a question, there's so much to it.
And you make me want to back up and ask you other stuff like, okay, well, first of all, you talk about the Earth being this very special place that is the Earth a living thing?
Yes, it is a conscious, living, breathing, sentient being. Its body is its planet currently. Before it was a planet, it was a being that had arms and legs or some other experience. In fact, Earth had tens of trillions of lifetimes. And before it decided it became a planet, which is also the legacy of everyone here on this world right now, is when you finish your time here, you get the legacy of Earth, which is you can become your own planet. You have learned all of the different experiences that Earth is teaching, which is the mothering nature or the fathering nature of to make sure sentient life can live on you. Earth was forced into a scenario to take on refugee species. So we've got a whole wide variety of ways of describing it, but Earth is this special, special place. And what she was before it is that reflection, that being that she was before. She lived in other universes. Just before she decided to be a planet, she wasn't one being. She was tens of millions of beings spread throughout millions of galaxies, simultaneously experiencing as much as she could before her sentience reached what's called seventh density status, where her soul layer experience was so much she could extend contractual agreements to a solar system or another sun or a galaxy itself. And she chose to become a new creation, and with the help of millions of others, she took all of her soul shards that were spread throughout many different galaxies and unified them in one point in space and time in this free-willed universe, and she made this planet. And then other DNA things were grafted onto her surface that were pre-chosen, like some types of trees, some types of water, all of those microorganisms, the starting soup. And then she went through the transformational process of connecting to the dream world of the universe, which sent back dreamtime entities to her to create a fabric of dreaming energy around her, which made her grow her planet tens of thousands of times faster than any other planet would grow. So she matured in a few hundred years, and at the point of maturity, this planet was vastly different than any other creation before. It is the first time in 17 universes a single being was able to do this with the assistance of many millions of others to create something that was brand new, a whole new layer of experience that was unseen before.
My goodness. I don't know what to ask you next. It's the rabbit hole is getting
Is it the red pill or the blue pill? Why
Hey,
don't you just ask some standard questions? What's going on in History Week? It doesn't matter what era of history it's in.
sure. What about the time right now? What's going on right now?
Do you pay attention to propaganda news?
No.
No. Well, what they're chitter chattering on, what propaganda is talking about is war in Syria, ISIS, which is they're trying to insert this more programming into you. As I was saying earlier, we're a species that has generational programming. It has historical programming to it. The victors have written our history for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So how do we know truth? Well, you start in your heart and you put that bullshit meter on. And everyone's got a different tuning to that bullshit meter, or the tuning to their own truth, or a resonant frequency that says that this is a layer of truth that I can begin to look into my beliefs with. And this is a belief system time where it's the belief system trains are all crashing throughout our historical falseness. And what is belief going to learn? Everyone's right. Because consciousness and energy depict the nature of reality. The quantum entanglement has been proven over and over again. We are a shared reality, but we aren't living in separation. We are living in a unity right now. We just haven't finished this last moment of reverse engineering our paradox, which starts at our history of why we're here now, why this one species that's on this planet with 7,300,000,000 human beings and another 50 million billion beings, living on this world we haven't met yet. That's what's coming to us. So what's going on now? Propaganda is saying nothing. Propaganda is saying Iran, ISIS. Propaganda is saying banking. Propaganda is saying Nasera. Propaganda is saying volcanoes, destruction. It's saying fear, because it wants you to create fear.
Yeah.
And all those people that are saying not fear, believe in yourself, start a sovereign movement, grow a garden, live in nature, those are the ones that are thriving now. And those are the ones that are going to have the greatest voice because their truth is connected into nature. And it's the nature of truth to be natural and not forced.
That's true. Getting back to the golden age, when was the last golden age? You said there were many. When was the last one?
Well, about 2 million years ago, 2,300,000 years ago is the last throes of the Atlantean Empire. They had hard to use these psychic weapons to reach out and wipe historical references off of the nature of whole sections of spiral galaxies. I mean, literally killed trillions and trillions and trillions of beings, and they had gone from the lighthouse of the universe, and then they became the dark people because they'd killed so many in defense of their own world. But justice and judgment proves what? Nothing.
Yeah.
The big bunch of one-eyed blind fools everywhere.
Right.
Peg legs everywhere, no arms, no legs. There's nothing to justice and judgment. Remedy and resolve comes through equity. And that was the original universal law in the reality that was meant for Earth. And each person comes to sovereignty and comes to equity in different terms of reference from different cultural references. And our golden awakening, the now versus then, the Atlanteans were losing their sovereignty because they had done so much. And when many souls just decided not to come back, they just said, we're going somewhere else, and we're leaving our soul shards here to take the brunt of the negativity of the fall. That was the last golden age. That was the last attempt at the Atlanteans to do good, before ultimately whatever they did turned out the worst, because they had created ancestral karma that not only was a part of this solar system, but reached out and affected thousands of other solar systems, which created an immigration pattern of revenge souls who needed that experience to find healing because they couldn't find remedy and resolve here because it was an unnatural world once again.
Okay. Let's ask you something else here. I had a question. How long... No, okay, I have two questions. First of all, what do you think of the Big Bang Theory? Supposedly the creation
it's a theory
right,
that
exactly.
really can never be proved. And if you pay attention to quantum mechanics at all since the 60s, it's already been proven wrong. And you would realize that it's a pretty much a paid theory that's been put forward to suppress true science.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at water cavitation, the little water bubble proves unlimited energy, and they were doing it the alchemists were doing it thousands of years ago when there was no science, and they could make their own cavitation pumps.
Okay. I knew you'd say something like that. How about human beings? How long have human beings been on the earth? My first question. And how long have human beings existed,
Let's
period?
define what a human being is.
Oh, dang.
We're a mix of 10,300 plus different species.
Are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We started as a concept, a DNA skin suit concept. We were there's 72 first species of Earth. There's no one single first species. Because of the way Earth was captured and migrated to when it went from 2 trillion to 500 trillion that fast, what that literally meant is we were an amalgamation of the best people. So what is a human?
In our present form?
They look like us.
Yeah.
But that's the residual image your light body is taking on with the programming from your DNA via an agreement you made with your mother and father to be in a DNA lineage that's part of a reality rules that has long-term agreements to be here from the beginning of time to the end of time. And no soul can get into a DNA lineage without the permission from the lineage members that are currently living. So there's specific rules that says you're going to be a human being. That means you have to have started from the beginning. And if you didn't start from the beginning, all of a sudden your other experience in another reality is going to reach out and bring you to the beginning of this experience. So we live in a paradox.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's complicated, but this is why it's so hard for us to awaken. So many people ask me, why didn't this happen or this happen? I go, because it didn't happen on this timeline. We were simultaneously running 4 paradoxes. So for human beings this time, what's different? We have the internet. What's different? We have free radio stations like this. What's different is we have the capability of saying more truth than we did before. So many thousands of factions have been created that no one faction can take over now. We didn't have that before. We had these mega factions where they all had brinksmanship amongst each other. Brinksmanship is the threat of nuclear war or annihilation. If one does, flicks you in the chest or pokes you in the chest with a heated debate, I'm going to nuke you. No, you're not. You're going to kill everyone. But when brinksmanship is your legacy, inevitably it gets used.
So you mentioned the Akashic record. Am I saying that correctly?
That's right.
What is that?
The Akashic record is a experience of the planet. Our planet is a physical being that's the body of her, and she has a dreaming mind, and that dreaming mind and physical mind are connected to the different crystalline structures and layer that are outside of her perceived molten core. The molten core isn't really molten, it's her spirit core, and it takes on many different transformational values. The oldest records are on the surface, and the youngest records are near the core. And what it is there's a crystalline veins that's networked all throughout the planet, and that is where the Akashic record is recorded and stored. The Akashic record isn't exactly live. It can take as many as 3 or 5 days for something to be made solid in it. So that's why predicting the future is hard and at the same time can be easy depending on the type of being that you're looking at. So the Akashic record is a recording of every being's experience in every lifetime they've had at this planet. And when that being leaves this planet and says, I'm done with my experience here, I want to take my record, the planet gives you its neutral perspective, so there's no polarity revealed in it of what it witnessed through your eyes as part of a shared reality experience. And that is downloaded into your light body DNA, and then that being can leave this planet and go anywhere else with an exact copy of what it did here. And if that light body is ever corrupted, it can come back here and make a transparent overlay to discover where the corruption was. And that's something that hadn't been offered in many millions of other planets out there. It was a very, very few planets had that. But Earth is capable of, again, overlaying your Akashic record. So what is the Akashic record? A recording of every single sentient experience in this world through the neutral perspective of the planet that's holding space for free-willed life. And this is duplicated on millions of other planets all around the galaxy and all around the universe. Your solar system records all of the experiences of all the planetary minds and all the individual minds on the planet. So it's another collective. And then all the stars collect to the central sun, which is the collection of all experiences, which is where Prime Creator, in theory, commonly exists amongst all people. And that is how the Akashic record is the web link of all life.
No,
life experience.
is Prime Creator, would that be the source or God or what? What?
Well, each individual person's their own God. God is a creation of propaganda that was inserted into us at about 21 million years ago to create this external separation.
Hmm.
You're a creator being. We all are.
Right.
It's our belief is our creation now. And this is the true wild west of free will that's going on now.
Right. True. And when did things start to turn? I mean, well, this time around, when did things turn into this, you know, well, not when, but when and why, I guess, did that happen when things were supposedly good and then things got bad? And are we
2000 in 2006 the Syrian Gray Wars ended, and it was the reptoids were massively invested into that because they knew if they overtook or just occupied those forces that were in a three-way fight to the death, they might be able to break a quarantine field that had been around Earth for many millions of years. Sometimes the quarantine field was heavily enforced by the good guys, and sometimes they laxed at it. So it's this give and take battle. In 2006, the Greys and the Syrians were defeated, and the Reptoids decided to lead a massive refugee train of people that were in slave societies. Many of them on a psychic addiction to a special kind of drug. It was really nearly nasty. And the good guys had to make a choice: free Earth at that time in 2006, or take care of this massive disaster that was looming everywhere, spread over many galaxies. That's where it changed for us. That actually gave hope for humanity here to claim its sovereignty in a span of 6 to 9 years between 2006 and 2015. There was this window of opportunity where much of the propaganda technology would begin to fail because thousands of other timelines were destroyed when the refugee trains from the reptoids were left, and the sacred geometry technology that were on other worlds that was linked into the dreaming mind of Earth failed. And that means multiple dream societies that were reptoid societies suddenly stopped existing here on Earth, and people began being freed of that. And that began in early 2006.
okay? Wow, I didn't know you'd have it down to the day. And,
Yeah, I spent a lifetime checking this stuff. And I've been asked this. Have you asked all your questions? And I said, when I was 19, I asked all my questions. And I was done
okay,
asking questions then.
yeah.
I mean, I know everything, because the first thing I learned is I don't want to know everything. But when I'm saying I'm done asking questions, then I mean I've learned what it is that this reality is, and I
Yeah.
learned what it isn't. And when you talk about what it isn't, you're going to lose what it is.
Right. So this war was between the Reptoids and the Syrians, or this was war between?
No, the Syrians and the Greys were fighting
I'm
in a
sorry.
death match, and because they wanted human DNA, and they wanted to come here and call another 10,000 people, and there was an agreement through Nixon and Reagan that they would let as many as 80,000 people be taken from this world. But there was to be a massive exchange of technology that would really heighten the political powers of that time. So the quarantine field was kicked up here, and for a long time they were just beating at the gates of the reality, and they couldn't get through until finally the reptoids said, we must do something big. So they left the massive refugee train, invaded the spot where the Syrians and the Greys were attacking, and began hitting them in their back lines, and then retreated to their homeworlds and counterattacked Earth, forcing all these troops to figure out where they were going to go. And that's 2007, 2008, 2009, where you have multiple scenarios where big triangles were opening in the sun, multiple gateways that were shown around other planets. That's when the DNA trade, and where you had about 200,000 people that were kidnapped from this world to support the DNA trade. But ultimately that DNA trade was collapsed in 2011.
What what's your I've heard stories, I don't know if this is true, but it's from the internet, about Saturn, that Saturn was once our sun.
No.
Have you heard that stuff?
Saturn is a planet created in similar concepts to Earth, but it was a masculine expression. Its purpose was to be the observer of the universe, and then go and to be like a first aid doctor if a planet was heavily damaged during some type of other planetary incursion, or to temporarily take on a species that their planet is going to give up its life force, but there's still millions that are there that would come to Saturn, and Saturn would take them somewhere else before Saturn also had its own invasion, where trillions of beings suddenly invaded it, so that they could use Saturn to come and capture Earth, because it was all about teleporting the planets into the right positions to encourage migration to living there.
What's the role of the rings around Saturn?
Currently, that is where all of the different dead planets that Saturn has eaten, literally eaten and consumed, and all of the millions of souls that are inside it are trapped in those rings. And those are emergency soldiers, because Saturn is a war planet now. Its purpose is to be able to call upon trillions and trillions of beings at a single moment and burn up their life force in a single attack if it has to. That's how focused of a being it can be. But currently it's operating in the planetary Logos realms, where it's using many of those millions of people in cold storage to be psychic influencers here on Earth.
Okay. Because there is supposedly, I don't know if you've looked into the Saturn death cult that I think it's Jay Widener and some other people talk about.
Oh yeah. That's more programming, because there were multiple cults that were organized through that where many people became part of the reincarnation grid, and they had thousands of lives trapped in that. And if they began spouting that spirit propaganda over and over again, there'll be people that awaken to that, and we'll just start doing it again.
Yeah.
Fear.
Right. And I think there's a rotating thing on the South Pole or the North Pole, some hexagon or something.
A dodecahedron, I believe, and that's a portal creation. That's Saturn doing some naughty stuff.
Okay. Naughty stuff?
Naughty, yeah. He's not a nice guy. Saturn's got an ex-wife that's about to give him a hard time, and that planet's called Alona. And at one point in time, Earth and Saturn, in metaphor, would be considered dating, and Saturn was wanted to be in a shotgun wedding, and Earth said no and left. And then now, many generations later, trillions of years later, this is it playing out at a whole new level.
Huh. Wow. What about Planet X? There's another fear
Nibiru.
Thing. Yeah, Nibiru.
Well, it did exist at one point in another timeline, and there are people that are consciously trying to bring it from one timeline to the other, because we've gone through multiple destructions through multiple timelines where Nibiru, Planet X, was real.
Yeah.
But also it wasn't real. Once it was out of our reality, it wasn't real. It left its imprint. And when it came back around, there were other beings who didn't believe in it, and it came back around and didn't do anything to us.
Now,
it cannot enter the galactic ascension machine unless we let it in, as our nature of our beliefs. And this is why so many off-world beings are trying to influence us by imprinting things into our megalithic cultures.
Oh, that's interesting. So unless we believe it collectively, you're saying?
Or uncollectively.
Oh, really?
That's a whole other way of looking at it.
Wow. Interesting. Otherwise, it doesn't exist.
Just Australia, before television and internet, if just Australia believed in this and just England believed in this, how could they ever meet?
Yeah. True. Interesting. Wow. So, what is the role of the sun in this solar system here?
Spiritual commerce. And it says this is the timer. Your experience in this solar system is nearing end. You've experienced the infinite experience here, and as soon as you've gotten that peak of experience of infinity, you go on the graduation time life, and you get shifted from the other 66 planets that are in our planet and come here. 66 planets in our solar system, and come here for your graduation on a single timeline, where the people that are living here resolve all of their timeline genocide karma.
So it's like judgment, sort of, in a way.
No, there's no justice or judgment. It's remedy and resolve. We're actually in what's called the Master Spiritual Court of Equity, where everything that was destroyed in the bad stuff that I told you about that Earth did, the same things were done to Earth. Earth didn't get to be the bad guy without having a whole bunch of bad stuff done to it.
Yeah.
But that's the people, not the planet itself. So the planets that were fighting each other with their people on the surface came to what's called spiritual courts of equity, which is natural universal law. And Earth, being linked to the dreaming minds of millions of other planets, was able to form a court of ancestors to begin recording and sharing everything that was happening on all timelines and dimensions. And the system of domination control didn't like this, and it created thousands and millions and trillions of false timelines to make their plan go through. And near the end now, we're on this single frame of reference of time, But in that single frame of reference of time is three other references of time. There's the above, the below, and the within time. Yeah, I know it gets even more crazy. And the sun is the keeper of universal time. So it's the DNA alarm clock that says wake up or stay asleep. It says free will or no free will. It doesn't influence us other than to say to your DNA, it's time for your contracts to come due. Is there zero balance? Is the planet repaying you? Are you repaying the planet? Is there more life to be done here? Is something new? Are you starting a soul family? And then there's a list of other things you do before you would transit out of the solar system and back to your natural immigration pattern.
Wow. My mind is blown all over the station with every word that you utter, it seems. We're coming up on a break pretty soon, so I don't know if I want to get into anything a little more heavy. No, wait, everything's heavy right now. But based on where we are right now, what is the purpose of people on this planet currently?
To find out what love means, what sovereignty means, that we do not need to accept the debt that ancestors have given us. It's fake debt. Debt does not carry over into spirituality. Spirituality has lots of its own issues as well as the government. And for spirituality, government, and science to come together for a few years is more than due time. It just takes free thinkers and some people with some willpower to get together and break bread and say, we can solve the nature of reality because it was done 60 years ago through quantum mechanics. There's just too many paid people that say this belief is more important than what your belief is. Yeah. And we begin realizing that it's a belief system battle, not a war anymore. And the battle is for belief. And then eventually factions will begin to create new factions, which create no factions until finally it's not about factions, it's about truth. And then a movement of truth opens to a truth. There's a movement of sovereignty, and each person will experience sovereignty differently. Some will have to go through the healing of the abuses that they had through this lifetime, and we'll need to see arrests of the bankers. And I can tell you, I'd really like to see the arrest of the bankers and the politicians, the people in the globalist depopulation agenda. Those people need to be brought to the public, and not in a manner of humiliation, but a manner of truth, so we can begin to figure out the mystery that they've created with us.
Yeah, begin to heal.
Almost, really did, and heal, just heal.
Yeah,
that's what this time is about, healing. It's not about being afraid. It's about being some way, being and living in nature, being one with yourself. You know, yes, I know it sounds so new agey, but it comes down to living in the moment. And not living in the field of shame, blame, and guilt that is our society of materialism and consumerism.
Totally. All right, we're right up against 7 o'clock right here, so I'm just going to pause here for a minute. Hold on. Andrew,
okay.
You're listening to WVWLP, Brattleboro, 107.7 FM, your community radio station. The number inside, and you can call. I'm talking to Andrew via Skype. You can call 802-246-6107. And by the way, the views and or opinions expressed on this program are those of myself and my guest, who's Andrew Bartzis, and hailing from Yelma.
Yelm, right? Washington.
Yelm, Washington. And we've been talking about, I don't know, have we been talking about galactic history.
In the nature of our reality.
In the nature of our reality. Yeah. So if you'd like to join the conversation, you can ask a question if you want, 802-246-6107. And so, Andrew, just a personal question. How do you deal with mere mortals when you walk around with this type of information?
Very carefully. I learned a long time ago I don't want to know everything. It'll make you crazy.
Right.
So there are skills that I've learned, the coping skills of being a psychic, not to hold on to energy of others. Sometimes it gets really dense. You're working with people that are very ill, or people that have been abused, or soldiers, whatever. You just have to balance your time, balance your day, make sure you have personal time, that you have things to do that aren't being psychic. That's really important. I like working with horses. I'm a horse communicator. I mean, I've worked with many different ones. So that for me is fun. That isn't saving the world stuff. That isn't revealing this galactic history stuff. That's one way. Another way is just being me.
Yeah.
Just doing things that allow me to be me, like doing my own laundry, instead of having someone else do it. Do the things that make you a human,
Oh, it looks like I
as
got a
well
call.
as
Oh, sorry.
it's okay, as well as going into society.
VW. Yeah, would you like to go on the air? All right, hold on a second. All right, caller.
Yes.
You have a question for Andrew?
Yes. Well, I only just tuned in a couple of minutes ago,
Okay.
but I my interest is in your tone. Your tone is very clear, and your information sounds pretty sound. I wish I had heard more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious as to what your take on what not only Edgar Casey said, but a lot of other beings have said about the Arcturians and the Hathorian beings.
All right, you want to know specifics about Arcturians and their positions here? I've actually done a tremendous amount of information on the Arcturians. They're a light-based species that operate in the blue ray spectrum of technology, which means they can understand the spectrum of blue energy. And when you come here to Earth, you have the seven layers of expression, which are the seven colors. And the blue colors can experience the lower density colors very differently. They can fork their streams from here to there and coexist here on Earth and Arcturus at the same time if they can get themselves into a DNA lineage that's locked into a paradox timeline. And this is where consciousness exploration communities of Arcturians began collecting other beings from other worlds. What these Arcturians do, they would unmanifest their physical bodies and then become energy and travel between one solar system and another, and then be invited to land as energy beings on a planet, manifest as a crystalline ship. So thousands of Arcturians could be manifest into one single crystalline ship. The doors would open, the beings would get on, and they'd become part of a consciousness exploration community, which would then come to Earth with a wide variety of DNA assortments so that they can begin searching through the vast volumes of human beings existing to figure out how to fork a source stream into a DNA lineage so that a coexisting being or a single existing Arcturian can be essentially streamed into the birthing process of Earth, bypassing the astral field controlled by the different archon grids.
Well, I don't know if you're a young man or an old man, but you are brilliant, and I'm rather impressed with your answer and the detail of your data. I wish you lived closer. I'd like to have coffee with you. Very few people have the audacity nor the strength of their conviction or their own truth to truth speak at such a level.
Yeah.
And I'm quite impressed. And is there a website or anything that I can link up to find out more what you have to say?
If you'd like, you can go to my website, galactichistorian.com. If you type my name, Andrew Bartzis, Bartzis, in Google, you'll see about 4,000 videos that are out there of different people using the material. You'll see a 20-part series I did with Lance White last year, where I did the entire 54 million year timeline readout of our world, of what happened the last 54 million years, the description of the timeline paradoxes. You'll also see me do a bunch of reading shows where, like what I was just telling you about Arcturians, much of that comes through in shows like I had a lot of Arcturians, a lot of Pleiadians, a lot of people calling, and I would do their past life associations of different lives in those different worlds and how it related here to this Earth resolution time. So you'll hear me do reading shows where you'll hear much more of that type of content where I'll talk about the Hathors, the Ogons, the insect communities, in different callers, and I'd get 300,000 daily listeners at that point.
Oh, that's great. Oh,
fantastic. So I have one last question, if possible.
That's fine. What's your name?
Sure.
What's your name, sir?
My name?
Yeah, just curious.
Is Henry Carter.
Okay.
What would be your simple best advice for someone who's been contacted by the Arcturians?
Ooh, ceremony. Absolutely ceremony. Dense energies can stick to you very easy like flies on poop. So you need to make sure you smudge your area or figure out a belief system that clears dense energy from your area. Fire ceremonies are the best unless you have waterfalls in your area, which you can regularly meditate under. If you can do both, even better. From there, you'll have conscious orbs, which are different layers of conscious exploration vehicles that would try to communicate deeper layers of DNA wisdom to you. Pay very close attention to your root chakra and how it interacts with your sacrum and your sacral and your hara or your center. That's where the dense energy will try at your belly button to influence through mother programming to lead you away from the Arcturians, because they always know when they're communicating to you. There's a specific frequency, but there are certain consciousness communities that come in and give you a blanket protection and a way to communicate through them through a backdoor if not being detected. But it requires you to create the language of rooting through your sacrum, through your solar, so that your heart is speaking the words of your soul truth, co-worded with the soul truth of what the Arcturians are trying to present in theme, so you can learn their psychic alphabet of creation.
Hey, Henry, I had a question for you. What's your interest? Why are you interested in the Arcturians? Just curious.
I myself am also an extremely lifelong metaphysician who has worked specifically in psychic research and with interdimensional research in beings, and I was obviously it was serendipitous for me to hear this communication on the radio today, because this gentleman who's speaking is probably one of the most brilliant people I've heard in a long time, and I'm quite impressed.
Great. Well, I'm glad you tuned in.
Well, out of curious, how did you come across this broadcast? Because what I teach about is called 1 degree of separation, and that puts the willies up the Arcturian spine when I really talk about that, because it's the greatest way to figure out collective consciousness.
Well, I'll just simply say that I was a student of Grandfather David Mononga of the Hopi Indians, amongst many other masters in my lifetime, and the Arcturian connection is a genetic connection for me as well. Through the dog star Sirius.
Right. So how did this show come to you? What synchronicity said, I'm going to listen to this show?
I have to say that it was a moment where I was conquering a relationship with a burn I had, actually, with some aloe vera, and I said I'm going to turn on the local radio station because there's something available for me to connect to.
There you go. And that's community radio doing its service. Yeah. That's where Brattleboro Radio's 1 degree of separation and my 1 degree of separation just brought this creation together that wasn't potentially predicted by anything in timeline viewing sight, which is the other big Arcturian teaching. Be aware of people looking at you through time.
Absolutely. Well, when we're living in this interdimensional time-space frequency, we live in a linear space. They live in past, present, and future all at once. So we have a hard time even comprehending that, much less, moving in that direction frequency-wise.
Exactly. In the new area of consciousness exploration, we'll be learning how to blend the colors of the crown chakra and the root chakra to create healing wave patterns, so the Arcturian blue wave technology can decrystallize the third eye that we have on the multidimensional level, not our physical crystallization. This is the things that blur our ability to see what our blue bodies are doing on other levels of reality, trying to resolve other karmic issues or non-karmic or energetic issues with your land or other entities.
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of work to do to live correctly. We must all understand this more precisely along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Ceremony, ceremony, man. Tell your story to the fire. That the Arcturians will giggle their heart silly when you actually try to tell them your whole story.
Yeah.
They're already laughing. I'm clairaudient as well. But is your information for your website available at this radio station as well? Because you spoke it so quickly, and I'm vibrating at a high frequency right now, and I wasn't even able to find a pen. I had to settle back down in order to.
I think if you just type my name, Andrew Bartzis, into Google, you'll get all of my information.
Andrew.
My main website, YouTube.
Yeah, Andrew Bartzis, Bartzis. ZIS. There we go.
ZIS?
Yeah. Z as in...
Well, you are beyond an angel, and you know what that means to all of us.
Thank you.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you. I wish I had hours to speak with you, my friend.
I know, right?
May your movement be always in beauty and light. Farewell.
All right, farewell.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Wow.
I love it when callers like that come through.
and I was listening intently of like, yeah, how is he listening to the show? How'd that come about?
Where did it come from?
Yeah, where did that come from?
What brought this out? That's called magic.
And yeah,
synchronicities.
That whole thing about community radio too is I turn it on sometimes and I hear, it's great when there's a live DJ here. Sometimes it's programming, and you hear that sort of that give and take, and it makes you more connected with the community. Whereas if you turn on commercial radio, it's what there's no connection.
Exactly. Every 6 minutes, your connection to what that speaker is gone.
Yeah.
That's why I love doing commercial-free radio. I mean, I'm very selective about who I do interviews with. Some commercials are acceptable. Some I don't want to associate my wisdom with that frequency.
I hear you. Well,
and thus, I get requests to go do big things, and my answer to them is no. I'd rather just do my 2-hour show, produce my own, or come on to shows like this because I can get to the truth and I can get that exact reaction. Somebody calling just decided to put it on.
Yeah.
Putting aloe vera on a vern. I'm going to focus on something else. And there's the universe giving him a gift.
It makes me feel really good because that's part of my mission is to get this information out there to people. And of course, I've been walking around with a lot of, not the information that you have, but just in general, and my head's exploding. So I need to get it out there. And it's great that other people have that same issue and also, want to hear this kind of stuff. So that's great to find like minds. Like people. All right, great. Well, so Andrew, where do we go from here?
Anywhere you want. If there's anybody else that'd like to call in and ask a question, please call in.
Yeah, 802-246-6107 is the number. You can call in and ask Andrew about anything. I had a question just thinking about the whole American experiment. Now,
go ahead.
It just occurs to me that perhaps the controllers of the world, shall we say, the people who set this thing up, made a mistake when America was created, because in theory, the idea was pretty revolutionary. Now, in fact, that's a different...
It was created that way on purpose to actually hijack all the power from the European communities, from the richest, longest DNA lineages there, and to create a much thinner Illuminati with much more power over all the other states. It was a creation to get as many free will beings amongst this common idea to take power away from this group. So no ancestral lineage would be more dominant than the other, even though it turned out that way. And that culminated into the 1860s, where Abraham Lincoln was the de facto leader of the Illuminati of the world, because they had stolen everyone's wealth from the world, literally.
Yeah.
Stole it.
Right.
Then you have the Tax Act of 1864, which was never approved by the states of the South, which all taxes are legal. The Cancer Act, the passports, the bonds, all of that under a Babylonian business concept to make you commerce so that they can justify over many thousands of generations a sacred geometry system that would harvest your spiritual energy and allow your physical body to be harmed by off-world beings.
Talk a little bit more about the sacred geometry stuff.
Let's look at the Masons. They're one of the easiest ways. A lot of people know it there. Every city, every town's got a little Masons lodge in there. They've been around for thousands of years. What they did is they built the roads. They built the bridges. They built the infrastructure. They built the infrastructure with bricks that had geometry stamped in them and had energy of people in belief system of hundreds or thousands of years ago that said these are places of energy and worship and magic, both good and bad, because they treated both good and bad as part of their system of belief. And those became places of power that people began dreaming into from one generation to the next generation. The next generation, Mason 1 passed on to his son and so on. You created a sacred system of geometry, of common belief system spread all over the world, which hijacked the Earth grid system. So we had to make a choice, this ancestral system that was created by the Mason concepts and other ones like them versus the natural Earth grid. And it began confusing where your soul family was incarnating or reincarnating, and this began the separation of density. There's those that went to the fake sacred geometry and those that went to the real sacred geometry. If you go to cities like London or New York, those cities are haunted as hell because they're designed to trap energy into the brick and mortar structure, literally.
Yeah. Yeah, New York is, well, they're all pretty much designed to be laid. And there was a big fire in London back in the day.
Yep.
And then they restructured the whole city of London. And, of course,
Correct.
Washington, D.C. is
three
on
different times, yeah.
Yeah, and
Three
Washington,
different times
D.C.
that happened.
Right, and Washington, D.C., of course, is laid out in a very Masonic way.
Oh, it has Masonic temples, symbols all over it.
Yeah.
And that's connected to the roads that connect to other sacred geometry cities like Harrisburg, PA, like Savannah, Georgia, like Atlanta, like Sarasota, all the different ports, which are sacred geometry ports, which are created by postmasters, who are what? People of the church.
Oh, are they?
Oh, yeah. The post was so that a king that was going out to conquer another land got their orders from the Pope. That's the post.
Oh. I didn't
Everything,
know.
all roads lead to Rome through the post, because the postal system is actually what rules the whole world.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, when you get into the deepness of sovereignty, you begin to realize there's many layers to the control.
Yeah.
Many, many layers to the control.
Definitely. The whole, I guess the world wars, those were predicted by several people. I'm thinking of Albert Pike, thinking of other people who predicted these wars. What was the purpose of these wars?
Let's see this as a common threat to the reality. There are certain types of DNA skin suits that were capable of creating manifestations such as telekinesis, aerokinesis, conscious manifestation, dream creation, and all sorts of other special psychic abilities, mediums and stuff like that, the teleportation, bilocation. Those skin suits needed to be eliminated before there was going to be any awakening to a wide broadcast of propaganda that would begin after these wars, when there was a new creation of birth. Because they knew as soon as there's a big die-off, what is it? A big birth rate.
Yeah.
So World War I and the Spanish influenza was to take out the first group of skin suits that they didn't like. So people incarnated back, and as they incarnated back, they came into World War II, and that's how they destroyed the light body entities that were the greatest warriors who could be part of the future awakening when propaganda would come in. So it's a way of thinning out the herd.
Yeah, because I recall reading about the turn of the century that there's a lot of spiritual knowledge, a lot of awakening going on, some incredible inventions going on. Science.
Oh, well, our
science
species
was at
woke up in 300 AD.
Right, and that science seemed to be at a high level. I mean, you had what's his name, Tesla, who was way ahead of his time, and then it came crashing down soon after that.
Created that way. It was created to crash.
Right.
The Cancer Act did that, actually.
The which act?
The Cancer Act of 1913.
Oh, what was the Cancer Act?
Put everything into debt. Put everything into debt.
Okay. The creation of the Federal Reserve and the.
No, it's called the Cancer Act. Cancer is like to treat cancer, but actually what it did is it funded cancer treatment and put everyone to debt, which allowed the gold to be taken away. It's the setup that said you can't own gold anymore. Is the way to inflate the prices of gold by putting future debt on. Like, if they're going to fund $30 billion in 1913, how much money is that now? Jeez. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But they knew just saying that large amount to cure cancer would make people believe and allow a belief to come in that the government is doing something, and science would be more powerful than spirituality. And then once the debt was there, they could take gold away during these wars.
Yeah. Wow. And so moving on, let's move on to 2001 just for fun. Hey, it rhymes. The whole 9/11 issue. I've heard in circles that 9/11 was a response from the powers that be, shall we say, that things needed to be sped up, that they were behind schedule as far as locking the police state down tighter on people. What does your information say about that?
It was I've actually described 9/11 many, many times. The best way to describe it is our world, our creation began with this timeline genocide, the paradoxes that we created. And when 9/11 was thought up, it wasn't thought up by one being, it was thought up by hundreds of beings. And what they began doing is plotting and planning hundreds of lifetimes ago to begin creating sleeper cell timeline agents that could come through and do actions that would be unpredictable to thousands of other people that are viewing timeline. So when 9/11 happened, there were tens of thousands of other beings who have timeline travel that went back and tried to stop those original 19 from doing that. And then you had thousands of other species who had thousands or millions of other time travelers who came in and tried to find the 19 souls that were originally influenced hundreds or thousands of years ago. And then you had multiple waves of other people trying to come and make it work at the same time, make 9/11 happen, which is the Bush and Cheney faction. So you had tens of thousands of different beings and whole species battling over this hunk of rock that's called the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
And what happened is everything happened. What we saw was a live paradox in which brinksmanship went to the worst on live TV, where all of the technology that we have hidden, super space speeds, timeline travel, all manifested in a massive timeline conclusion that created a paradox there on all timelines. Thus, why 9/11, it's everything happened. Everyone viewed it on all the timelines. And then 10 years later in 2011, because of that, we went through thousands of timelines or hundreds of thousands of individual timelines, each being to existing on one timeline. One. First time in 924,000 years as a species that we existed on one timeline.
Oh, wow.
And that was the direct result of 9/11, where all the species that were a part of this great drama, spiritual drama, this physical drama, this timeline drama, this drama, they all put their cards on the table and did a big game of poker.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
So who won 9/11?
Yeah, who won?
Who won 9/11? Who won? Well, we're still seeing the legacy of a Middle Eastern crisis.
Yeah.
We're still seeing a legacy of interference by factions inside the United States military, inside the G7 and the G20. We see the BRICS nations, and then we see all of this other propaganda news. And you can't tell what's truth from bullshit because some of it is truth laid with bull poop, and then others of it is truth later with even deeper truth. And it requires people to just turn on a community radio station like the caller before to get a lightning spark of some new layer of truth for them to explore for themselves. That's what our awakening is going to be.
Yeah.
And I say this over and over again. Nothing is going to happen. The aliens are not going to come from the sky until we get up in the same scale and size of the 1960s and 70s and are marching for the words sovereignty, peace, and respect, and demanding that people be brought to tribunals of justness, not justice. Justness is where they are brought to the layers of truth without humiliation, so millions of others will testify for the goodness of our global society. And those at the top doing the worst, they will be punished. Punished according to a new way, not the old way, because we are not going to recreate the old ways. We're going to create the new ways. But for that to happen, people have to heal. The technologies have to be turned off. The debt has to be taken down. The propaganda and rhetoric has to be turned down so people can get the space back in their head to be once again. And then we can begin to learn at such a deep layer of who we are, what we've been for, and what legacy we offer our 7 future generations of children.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear that from other shall we say, alternative thinkers or spiritual people, is that you have to start with yourself first. I mean, if you yourself aren't right, how can you go out and affect change if you yourself are in the darkness, shall we say, and not doing things in a right way, positive way. I hear that a lot, and then I think of people who kind of stay on the sidelines because they are, basically afraid to move. They know what's going on. These are people who know what's going on. Maybe they haven't connected the dots as well as other people, but they know there's a lot of evil and nasty things going on in the world, but they're too afraid to move. And they say, anything that they do, it won't matter because it's just one person, and what can one person do? It's a sort of a typical refrain that most likely came from the system itself.
It did, until one day a fruit vendor in Tunisia who suddenly was told that he had to pay taxes and get a license that on a fruit vending station his father had passed on to him and his father had passed on to his father. Suddenly said, I can't do this anymore. I have no money to eat, no money to do anything. And he walked into a square and set himself on fire. And from there began an Egyptian revolution, a Libyan revolution, the Green Revolution, the Syrian. All of that was not predicted. And one man did change the world.
True. Yeah, or Rosa Parks, or
Rosa Parks, I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King. Many, many instances has one person changed the world.
Oh yeah, and I think what else happens too is that other people become inspired by these actions. So you could say, well, what can one person do? And we live in this sort of separate world. People are so shut off from one another that it's easy to understand how people get to that point. But what happens also is that when you're acting, in a righteous sort of peaceful manner or true manner, other people get inspired by it, and then they go, "Oh, Andrew's got this, radio show where he's talking about, the Akashic record and all kinds of other stuff. That's interesting to me, and that inspires me to do this other thing." So you have a radio show. When's your radio show?
It will be this Saturdays at 9 p.m. Pacific at bbsradio.com. It starts the 28th is my comeback to public radio. I've been doing my own webinars and private radio as well as a blog talk channel with New Earth Nation. I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get communities together. Much like your community radio station, we started a New Earth Nation community station where the free thinkers and leaders of the world that are coming together with different permaculture concepts, science technologies, spiritual concepts, law and sovereignty have come together in this called newearthnation.org. And I've done a tremendous amount of work behind the scenes to set up webinars there as well as to get communities to work together.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. We got to work together. Somebody's got to try.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to try.
Yeah, get out
and
of
the truther communities out there, they're the ones that got to try the most because they're out of new information. Just like Hollywood's out of information. We already know it all.
Yeah.
We knew it all in 2009 and 2010. And I'll give the props to Carrie Cassidy and Project Camelot, Alfred Lamont Weber, and all those other truth warriors that are out there. They held space, as well as thousands of other hosts held space so that just enough people can yawn as they're rubbing their eyes going, what's that in the background?
That's a funny thing to say. What do you mean by that?
The technology is so strong, it's like waking up from a drug-induced sleep.
Yeah.
On some people, it's that strong. I mean, I get private sessions where, these people are possessed by the system. They're like the proverbial Agent Smith, like from The Matrix, where the agent just walks into anybody.
Mm-hmm. Literally,
they become karmic resolution machines, and literally dense energies come into them, activate their DNA skin suits, another part of another lifetime where they're a very nasty person's habit patterns come through. People become aggressive, become violent, become projecting of psychic parasites, become housings for psychic parasites, which is common in our world. I mean, there are like bed bugs have been around for hundreds of years. Psychic parasites have been around for thousands of years. They're a part of our community. Technology has just figured out how to point them in the directions of humans who are tasty morsels.
Yeah. What do you mean by psychic parasites?
Things that exist on an energy level, a dense energy that has a limited form of intelligence that will attach to one of your energy meridians or centers and begin sucking life like a leech. Life force like a leech, and then after a while it collects your energy and begins creating a sentience, a mimic sentience based on you or every other being that it's been sucking on. And what recently happened from the 20th to the 23rd of June was a massive psychic parasite released during the highest amount of light. And what that does is it excites these parasites to go very active very quick. And they've been using porn sites all throughout the world to basically make these super fat psychic parasites. And then they just released tens of thousands of them on the internet on the 20th to 23rd and just watching people's lives destroy. And I've gotten countless amounts of emails because I did this thing last year and this year. It's coming, and it's proof positive. And it happens every time that they're the highest amount of sunlight and massive release of propaganda and psychic parasites that put people into shame, blame, guilt, fear, depression, regression, or obsession, or any other the deadly sins that lead them away from self, inner awareness, and love.
True, and what it takes to break out is an awareness of what's going on and how you're interacting with yourself. Is like, okay, is my interaction because of, to really study where you're at. I was in a store once with my wife and kids, and I was like being grumpy and cranky and grouchy, and I'm like, all of a sudden I was like, wow, I'm really being cranky, aren't I? And it went away after that. Like this realization of, wow, this awareness of where you're at instead of just being grumpy and cranky and, being inside that bubble and feeling justified because of, X, Y, and Z. And I was like, wow, I'm really being, for no reason,
Right.
just.
And that what you're saying right there. Here's another example. People can relate to this. You ever just been walking into a new area and you see a cat in somebody's house and you go, "Hey, cat," and there's just this thought that comes out of nowhere: hit the cat, and you in your mind go, "That's not me,"
Right?
And then you go on. That is a psychic parasite or an entity that just entered your field. Classic example. Sign number one: something that is not you that comes over your field like that. Something literally just penetrated, tested you to see if it has room to put in this soup that's around us: shame, blame, guilt, depression, aggression, obsession, to figure out a hook into you so it can get more energy off of you. These are called feeding tubes.
Right. Wow. So many ways to go from now. So you do readings, and you're a psychic as well.
I do. I read the Akashic record, a person's past, present, future lives, help them understand the context of the paradox they live. I do healings. I work with all sorts of people. I've been doing this for a really long time, and there are times that I can do 4 or 5 or 6 sessions one week, and the next week I'll be blown out of energy because depossessing one person or a haunted child, which has been really common the last 3 months of the haunted kids. That I'm going to be doing a special series on how parents can identify hauntings in their own high schools, local schools, understand what these psychic parasites are, and they're as easy at getting rid of them as putting a flea collar on. Not literally a flea collar, but they're pests. Yeah. And if you give them power, they can take a lot of power and make your life miserable. But they're really quite easy to get rid of. The great neutralizer is salt. And if people out there with kids, take salt. Regular salt. Well, not iodized table salt. A lot of the properties are like a regular coarse sea salt, like the thicker grained. Yeah. About a cup of that in a Ziploc bag, and put that over the back of your neck and lay down on a pillow. That'll help get people to sleep. People that are having nightmares or people having PTSD. It'll really help neutralize the system so that your sentinels turn off, so you can actually sleep. I've recommended this to hundreds of people that have been in sessions with me with different scenarios. Over the back of the neck and the tailbone is most primary. When dealing with kids, their toys and their bed where they sleep. That is where you can learn energy clearing techniques from any belief system, whether it's smudging or any of the other ones, dowsing, clearing. It has to be more than intent. Yeah. Intent is the kid's way. You have to go beyond intent. See it as a ritual or as a ceremony of protection with love coming out of you, with the true frequency of heart space behind that concept, so the area is imprinted with what you want, which is a protective field of love around their bed and around their toys. It's important that toys get cleared. When kids go off to kindergarten or go off to school, oftentimes they're in the environment of other kids who have been abused or have parents that are drug or use alcohol or are dealers, and they bring entities with them. Children are always trying to heal their other children. It's just the nature of who they are. And a simply aware parent who doesn't want to arouse suspicion can do things energetically to an environment to make sure that entities don't stay and kids can play free.
What's the symptoms, I guess, of a haunting or a possessed person, child, or
doing things that they don't normally do? Let's say exploding energy that comes out of nowhere, not resisting everything that's to education and only eating sugars, because that's another type of parasite that gets in there and is just over their appetite. And as they get highly bound on sugar, they can take over their dream world and then begin nightmares. Dark circles under the kids' eyes. If you see dark circles, that means they've been under some longer term attack. and that doing something in their room is important. Maybe sleep in the bed with them and ask them what the creaks and the noises mean, and begin to change their room so that something doesn't manifest for them.
Yeah.
Then there are other times that our kids are just really psychic and have enough intelligence to them to start talking with entities. And sometimes these entities don't know when to shut up. And you've got to step in there and begin a process of teaching the child how to manifest no means no.
Yeah.
And you can teach that to a kid at a young age so that these beings cannot affect them. And if people would like, you go to my website, galactichistorian.com, and you see the resources tab, and you click on that, and you'll see something called spiritual contract removal. You'll see one for the divine feminine, divine masculine, government, banking, and media. And those are things that you can read out loud to your environment or to your children out loud over their toys, or read for them in the privacy of your own love frequency, so that they too have this ability to live in a sovereign expression.
Okay. What about television? I've heard stuff about. Have you heard of sigil magic?
Yep.
Sort of possessing people through television and
That's actually what was being done on different radio shows and webinars this past weekend. TV shows are classic for during this time. There's a reason they have the Nielsen ratings, going on at these times. Because they want the most amount of listeners to be exposed to the most amount of propaganda that can have energetic technologies behind them, physical technologies, implantation through the sensing system and built inside the TVs. Because yes, they do. And all those Xboxes out there or PlayStations that have the optical eye or the Wiis, they know where you are and what you're doing and have an XY coordinate of you and can broadcast into you an energy implant that will have solid form within 36 hours, and you'd never know it was put into you.
Wow.
They don't need to abduct you. They can literally just teleport the energy into you, and it will manifest within a few hours.
So it's like, injecting a mojo or a evil spirit into you or something like that?
Some way of control. Usually it starts with a puppetry or an identifying what you're doing. Maybe you're an intensely powerful psychic on the dream world, but you're just a normal construction worker in the physical world with no knowledge of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they'll put implants into you so you get disconnected from your dream world and you're just a normal construction worker for a few years.
Right. Until
the implant fails and then they send something back at you.
Wow. Well, fascinating stuff, Andrew. And your website is... people can
galactichistorian.com.
Right, and they could just Google your name, Andrew Bartzis, B-A-R-T-Z as in 0-I-S, and you can check out his stuff. And I want to thank you so much for being on the program. This has been a real, I've been blown away for the most part and pretty much speechless. And I want to thank the caller for calling and bailing me out to some extent. And thanks so much. Let's do this sometime again soon, okay?
Definitely. I would definitely, maybe we can get a simulcast thing going together and share community radio stations and get something together where multiple hosts can maybe host something to get everyone exposed.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, we do like a little marathon or something.
Right? I'm down for that.
Yeah, get the communities together and get people waving the sovereignty flag of awakening.
Sovereignty. Nice.
What would that flag look like? There's no flag.
Right? And we will not follow anybody.
Exactly. Individuals.
That's right. It all starts with you at home and wherever you are, in your car or wherever, maybe on your bicycle. I have an MP3 player that has a radio. I can get the radio station on it. It's pretty amazing.
And you can go through the live stream site here, so your cell phone can tune into it.
Yep,
too.
That's true.
It's a pretty simple stream on your data. That's how my audience grew. People listening to my radio shows through their cell phones.
Yeah, it's amazing. The Android apps and all the other different apps, and so this whole technology stuff, which people need to use it as a tool, not be used by it. I see so many people who are addicted to it. And yet, on the other side of it, there's just an incredible wealth of information that you can get from this incredible technology that we have at our fingertips, quite literally. So, all right, thank you so much, and let's play a little Jimi Hendrix to take us out.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Have a good one. Thank you very much.
You too, guys.
See you, Andrew. Bye.
Yep.